Hey everyone, welcome to this explainer. Today, we're going to uncover the hidden superpowers of music and words. We'll be comparing two incredibly different but equally fascinating poems from your 10th standard curriculum. We are going to build complete conceptual mastery of this unit from the ground up. We'll see how a seemingly ordinary, totally exhausted man can entirely transform himself, and then we'll contrast that with the pure, unstoppable motion of a marine animal. It's all about transformation and motion, so let's jump right in. Okay, here's our roadmap for today. We'll start with the worn-out musician, move on to the gospel of jazz, and meet the poet Carl Wendall Hines. Then we'll go diving with the seal, uncover the magic of words, and finally, check your understanding. Section 1, the worn-out musician. Let's dive right into our first poem, Jazz Poem 2 by Carl Wendall Hines, Jr. We're going to start from the ground up by visualizing a very weary, static figure. I really want you to picture this tired old man. He stands in what the poet calls a self-brought solitude. His head is down, his eyes are closed shut, and he honestly looks like a pathetic figure. The text actually tells us he's full of the wearies of living, which means he's just no longer enthusiastic about anything in life. He looks completely defeated. Let's do a quick whiteboard-style walkthrough of his physical traits. Look at the specific details the poet gives us. A wrinkled old face showing pain in literally every crease. A frayed collar on a faded blue old shirt that's turning dark with sweat. A sagging stomach that his worn old jacket can barely even hold in. And perhaps most heartbreakingly, he has these rundown shoes with paper stuffed inside them just to plug the holes. This list perfectly illustrates just how completely worn out and impoverished he appears to the world. He is absolutely a man who has endured a whole lot of hardship. Now, what's really interesting here is this specific quote, like a black ancient mariner. The poet brilliantly uses this comparison to a famous character from an old poem by Samuel Taylor Coleridge. The ancient mariner was this burdened sailor, cursed to wander the earth, compelled to tell his story to anyone who would listen. So by calling our jazz player a black ancient mariner, the poet is showing us that this musician feels he has an urgent, almost desperate message for the world. He might be silent in his speech, but as we're about to see, he has something absolutely vital to say. Section 2, the gospel of jazz. And you know, this brings us to the turning point, because everything changes the absolute second he reaches for his instrument. Notice the stark contrast here. On one side, we've got our worn-down man. On the other, his instrument, hanging across his chest, supported by nothing but a simple wire coat hanger, is his old alto saxophone. And as he gently lifts that sax to his parted lips, his entire demeanor just begins to shift. His ears perk up, trained on the bass line. Suddenly, he's no longer just a tired old man. So, the absolutely crucial point is what happens when he starts to play. He isn't just playing music, he is preaching. He was sent here to preach the black gospel of jazz. Suddenly, he becomes incredibly eloquent. Where he was totally silent and defeated just a moment before, he's now commanding his audience to listen, preaching it with words of screaming notes and chords. His music is literally the voice of his soul. And this brilliantly illustrates the ultimate transformation. The music fills him with a completely new life. The poet literally says he is no longer a man. Through the pure magic of his music, he forgets his pain, he gathers wings, and he turns into a bird. He flies higher and higher and higher. He's completely liberated from his sagging stomach, his rundown shoes, and his wrinkled face. Well, at least until the music stops, and he has to return to his ordinary poor life. But man, in that moment of playing, he is absolutely transcendent. Section 3. Meet Carl Wendall Hines. Before we change speeds and look at our next poem, let's briefly look at the brilliant mind behind this powerful transformation. Carl Wendall Hines, Jr. is the author of Jazz Poem 2. He was born in 1940 in North Carolina and graduated from Tennessee Agricultural and Industrial University in 1962. Hines is a celebrated contemporary writer, and what makes his work so incredibly special, as we just saw, is his ability to capture the profound, unseen magic within everyday people. He literally shows us the royalty hiding right beneath a faded blue shirt. Section 4, diving with the seal. Now for a massive high-energy contrast, let's jump right into William J. Smith's poem, Seal, where absolutely everything is about rapid, unstoppable motion. Unlike the static, head-down posture of the jazz player before he plays, this seal is an absolute explosion of movement right from the very first line. The poet describes the seal as quicksilver quick, softer than spray. Now, quicksilver is liquid mercury. It's slippery, it's impossible to pin down. The seal is darting through his watery room with this incredible, joyful energy. Let's see how this action builds step by step. Just track these moves with me, okay? First, he dives from the rocks with a zoom. Then, he darts past crabs, eels, and green seaweed. Third, he swims with a swerve and a twist, plunging down past stingrays and sharks. And finally, before you can even say a word like dill pickle or apple butter, he plops right at your side with a giant mouthful of fish. It's snappy, it's fast, and it's just so full of life. Section 5, the magic of words. So, as students analyzing this literature, we kind of have to ask ourselves, how do these poets make us feel the heavy, crushing exhaustion of the musician and then the lightning speed of the seal? Well, they use poetic superpowers, specifically figures of speech. Let's break them down. Our first superpower is imagery. Think of imagery as the high-definition camera of poetry. It uses words to describe experiences for our five senses, creating super vivid mental pictures and emotional responses right in our minds. Carl Wendall Hines is an absolute master of this in Jazz Poem 2. Look at these examples of imagery from the poem. A wrinkled old face, a sagging stomach, a faded blue old shirt. By explicitly listing these visual details, the poet paints a mental picture so vivid and so real that we can practically feel the jazz player's exhaustion ourselves. We don't just read that he's tired, we truly see the wearies of living etched right into his physical form. On the other hand, the poem's seal uses a totally different tool called consonance. Consonance is the repetition of consonant sounds in words that are close to each other. William J. Smith uses this to literally make the words sound exactly like the action they're describing. Let's actually test this out. Read this line aloud with me. A flip of the flipper, a flick of the wrist. Do you hear it? Notice how those repeating F sounds, flip, flipper, flick, perfectly mimic the quick, snapping, splashing motion of the seal swimming underwater. It makes the poem feel fast and slippery, totally matching the subject matter. That is the true magic of words at work. Section 6. Check your understanding. All right, we've covered a whole lot of ground today. Let's lock in this conceptual mastery by tackling a core textbook question directly, applying everything we've just learned. Here is a classic question you absolutely need to know. Why do you think the jazz player keeps his head down at the beginning of the poem? Can you recall that vivid imagery we discussed at the very beginning of this explainer? Think about his physical appearance and what it really represents. Well, if you remembered those details, you are spot on. The conceptual answer is that his physical posture perfectly reflects his emotional weight. His head is down because he's a pathetic figure totally overwhelmed by life's hardships. He's full of the wearies of living, showing deep pain in every single wrinkle. He's essentially lifeless and completely defeated by poverty and age, right up until the magical moment the music saves him and gives him wings. And that brings us to a final question for you to ponder. If music can give a weary man wings, what is your saxophone? What's the passion, the hobby, or the art form that lifts you up, makes you forget your troubles, and totally transforms your world? I'm going to leave you with that thought. Find the passion that gives you wings and keep exploring the incredible power of words. Thanks so much for learning with me today. Welcome, students. If you're gearing up for the highly competitive Karnataka SSLC board exams, you are exactly where you need to be. I am your veteran board evaluator, and in this explainer, I'm going to show you exactly how to extract maximum marks for Jazz Poem 2. We're going to base this entirely strictly on the official Karnataka SSLC evaluation keys. Now, I know you already understand the basic story of the poem, so we aren't going to waste time re-explaining elementary concepts. Instead, we're putting on our examiner hats. I'm going to show you exactly where students routinely lose marks, and more importantly, the exact keywords you need to write down to essentially force the evaluator to give you full marks. Look, if you want those guaranteed marks, especially in the crucial 3 and 4 mark descriptive sections, you literally cannot afford to write vague summaries. You need to know exactly what the board evaluators are hunting for on your paper. Remember, evaluators are scanning hundreds of papers a day. They do not have the time to search for your meaning. They are looking for very specific, high-yield phrases. When they see them, tick, full marks. When they don't, you lose out. It's really that simple. So here is our blueprint for today. We'll cover 1, the 1-mark strategy, 2, the worry checklist, 3, the 2+2 formula, 4, mark traps to avoid, and 5, poetic devices. All right, let's jump right into section 1, the one-mark strategy, securing the basics. Okay, we're starting with the lowest hanging fruit, the one-mark multiple-choice questions. This is where you lock in your foundation, and honestly, these should take you less than 30 seconds in the exam hall. This exact question from previous board papers is an absolute favorite for the examiners. In fact, it appeared directly in the 2021 question paper. It asks, his rundown shoes have paper in them, suggests that the jazz player was, and the options usually give you choices like poor, simple, clever, or rich. Now, the evaluator's key is incredibly strict here. They just want the word poor. So please, do not waste your precious exam time over-explaining. You don't need to write out a full sentence explaining why having paper in his shoes means he has no money. Just write down the option letter and the word poor, and move immediately to the next question. You've got to save that time and energy for the descriptive sections. Moving right along to section 2, visualizing the evidence. I call this the weary checklist. When you tackle the 2-mark written questions, you have to provide literal textual evidence of his physical misery. Picture the jazz player in your mind. Notice the sagging stomach, the closed eyes, and the head pointed down. As an evaluator, I am literally scanning your paragraph to find these specific physical descriptors.
You need to memorize this checklist immediately. Because let me tell you, writing "he looks bad" or "he is tired" gets you exactly 0 marks. But writing "frayed collar," "faded blue shirt," or "run-down shoes with paper" is a guaranteed half mark per point. A really great memory trick here is to just mentally scan the man's body from top to bottom during the exam. Start up at the wrinkled face, move down to the frayed collar and sagging stomach, and end all the way down at the shoes with paper.
Oh, and keep an eye on this critical detail for your 2-mark answers. The official key explicitly awards marks if you describe his instrument correctly. Please don't just say he held a saxophone. You must write that his alto saxophone is supported from his neck by a wire coat hanger. That exact phrase, wire coat hanger, proves to the examiner that you've read the text intimately and you aren't just making a blind guess. Next up, section 3, the 4-mark gold mine. This is where we use the 2+2 formula. Now we tackle the ultimate prize, the highly recurring 3 or 4-mark descriptive question. The prompt almost always asks how the jazz player's physical appearance contrasts with his playing, or why he's described as a commanding artist. The evaluators use a strict 2+2 formula to grade this. What that means is you absolutely must structurally divide your answer. Dedicate the first half of your paragraph to his pathetic physical appearance, using that weary checklist we just went over. Then, dedicate the second half to his commanding artistic transformation. Listen to me on this. If you only write about his music, you are capping your score at 2 marks out of 4, no matter how beautifully you write it. For that musical transformation half, these bullet points right here are the exact phrases lifted directly from the SSLC key answers. You must write them down to secure those final 2 marks. When the jazz player lifts that saxophone to his parted lips, he is sent here to preach the black gospel of jazz. He becomes no longer a man, not even a black man, but a bird which gathers wings and flies high. Use these exact textbook phrases to lock in your full marks. Don't paraphrase it. Let's transition to section 4, mark traps to avoid. Let's see how avoiding common student mistakes separates the average scores from the state toppers. Every single year, we see students fall into the exact same traps because they write in casual, everyday language instead of using exam-specific vocabulary. The vague answer here, saying he looks poor but plays well, it shows a basic understanding, sure, but it loses marks because it completely lacks textual evidence. Now, the specific, keyword-heavy answer aligns perfectly with the board's evaluation scheme, using terms like pathetic figure, wrinkled face, bird, and gospel of jazz. That right there? That is a topper's answer. Write this specific phrase down right now. Go ahead, write it down. Silent in speech, but eloquent in music. Evaluators absolutely love seeing this high-yield sentence. It perfectly summarizes the jazz player's dual nature. If you drop this sentence into your 4-mark conclusion, it acts as a massive signal to the examiner that you truly understand the core theme of the poem. It practically screams, "Give me full marks." And finally, section 5. High-yield poetic devices. Let's cover the poetic devices that examiners use to test your deeper appreciation of the syllabus. The entire poem, Jazz Poem 2, is built on a paradox. Now, a paradox is the use of apparently contradictory ideas to point out an underlying truth. The contradiction here is that a weary, pathetic physical figure, someone full of the wearies of living, can simultaneously be a commanding, majestic artist who flies high like a bird. So if they ask for the figure of speech representing his dual nature, your answer is simply paradox.
To contrast this, let's look at another poem in your syllabus that evaluators love to test for sound patterns, which is Seal by William J. Smith. Notice how the physical motion of the seal is represented through specific sound patterns in the line, a flip of the flipper, a flick of the wrist.
If you're asked about the poetic devices in Seal, the repetition of the F and L sounds in flip of the flipper is a classic example of consonants that you absolutely should identify. Now, unlike alliteration, which is strictly at the beginning of words, consonance is the repetition of consonant sounds anywhere in words that are close to each other. Keep this distinction really sharp in your mind for both the grammar and poetry sections of the paper. As you head into your exams, keep this final evaluator key point in mind. You now have the exact blueprint, the 2+2 formula, and those high-yield keywords. Just like the jazz player transforms and transcends his reality through his music, how will your own dedicated strategy help you gather wings and fly high above the competition? Think about that. Best of luck on your SSLC exams, and I'll see you in the next explainer.